Hey, this is Victor Antonio with another sales influence moment. Let's go buy a car. Yeah, let's buy a car. Now, when we decide to buy a car, let's walk through the process of what we typically do. There's an event. Let's say the car broke down just one too many times and you're like, that's it, maintenance costs are too high, I'm getting a new car. We'll call that the event. Some people call it a trigger, call it either one, right? Then you start looking for alternatives, right? Okay, what type of car should I buy now? You start looking at SUVs, sedans, whatever it may be, mid-size, large car, small car, whatever it may be, compact. You start looking for them. Then you start looking at the reviews. Once you start narrowing your choices down, you start looking at the reviews, figuring out what your budget is, what you're willing to pay, and then you ultimately select a car you want. Once you select the car you want, you will implement that. What does that mean? You'll drive it around, and then over time, you'll measure how well it's performing. Gas, maintenance, so forth and so on. And then you go into a hold mode. You're happy with your car. You're good to go until another event happens, right? Like again, you've had it for 2 or 3 years, and the hold mode could be like 3 years, and you decide the lease is up or the car's starting to fail you. You're not liking it anymore. You change for whatever reason it may be. You then begin the whole process again. Now, I start here because I think it's interesting to understand how this works for us as consumers. But when you're selling to a client, they've gone through this process. For example, let's say you're trying to sell a software system, again, a SaaS product, right? Now, sometimes the customer comes to you because there's been an event, right? Something's happened with their current software that they're not happy with. That's created an event. They look at alternatives. They begin the review process, and then they maybe reach out to you for clarification to help them kind of funnel down, right? Answer questions. Then they make a buying decision. Then they implement the software package. They measure how well it's performing, and then they go into hold mode again, similar to buying a car. Now, why is this important for us to understand? Because if you're selling, especially in the B2B space, you got to know where the customer's at. For example, if they just bought something and they're in the implement and measure mode, right? Or even the hold mode because they just bought something recently, the chances of you selling them go down dramatically. But if you catch them early on in the life cycle of searching for a product, in other words, they're looking for alternatives or reviews, this is perfect. If we can insert ourselves somewhere in this part right here, that's even better. Now, keep this in mind. Sometimes we can create the event. Yes, if you're selling a product or service, maybe the event could be you positioning your product in such a way that they said, we never looked at a solution like this. We didn't know this existed. We didn't know it could save us that much. We didn't know it could make us that much faster or increase our profitability or market share. And by showing them this dramatic change in what your product or service can do, you create this event that makes them want to look at other alternatives. In this case, you. So keep this in mind when you're talking to a client. If they're using a product or service already, one of the questions I would ask is, how long have you been using them? This will give you an idea when they decide to implement that service. Now, if they've been using it for the last 3 or 4 years, then again, we can have that conversation about how happy you are with, in other words, how they're measuring their success. They can say, we're happy with our current supplier, to which you're going to say, I'm happy that you're happy with your current supplier. But let me ask you a question, Mr. Klein. In business, isn't it always good to have options? They're going to respond, of course it is, Victor. I said, well, that's all we are. Can I ask you a couple of questions about some of your metrics that you're currently using to measure this existing software that you're currently using? That kind of gives you an opening. Now, again, if you can come in with better KPIs, better metrics, you create this artificial event where you get them to go, maybe we should look at your product. So again, the big takeaway here is know where your buyer is mentally in this whole buying process so you can sell more effectively. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you understand the customer, where they're at mentally, and you know how to sell them at each of these points. Take care.